morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. I'm talking about teens, dating, and sex. You know that weird monster who's like lurking in the background, but really you'd rather bury your head under a pillow and just pretend that it's not happening because, ew, no, and yet it's gonna happen. So today we're gonna dive in and we're gonna start talking about it. Because I think if there's one thing we've learned, and actually this has been statistically proven, the more you can talk about this with your teenager, the far better off they will be to manage and be with this reality. That's right, it's a reality in their life. All right, let's, hi, hey Olga, yeah, nice to see you. Okay. Let's jump in. My name is Allie Payne. I'm a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach, and I've been working with parents and teens for 15 years now. I think I can say that as of a few days ago, 15 years, wow, to help parents and teens close that chasm gap and end the painful disconnection, emotional blow-ups, stressful silences, and create a more connected relationship built on trust and respect. I am going to tell you a little bit today about my experience as a teen and dating and sex. I just posted an IGTV, like a little 3-minute video right before this about my experience and how my first relationship, very serious relationship, ended. If you want to watch that. Today I want to give you tips so that you feel more equipped and safer to have some of these skin crawly conversations with your teenager and stay in that conversation with them through their teen years so you become the safe place where they are going to bring their questions and concerns or fears or pain. And even though you don't have all the answers, because we never will, because we're not living their life, right? Even though you don't have all the answers. Hey, Connie. And even though you don't need to know all the answers, you remain a safe place for your teenager through a very kind of tumultuous, I think of a rapids on a river. Have you ever been whitewater rafting? I always think of teen dating and sex as like the class 4 rapids. There's very rarely teen dating and sex that looks like calm, easy breezy water. That's not usually how it rolls. It's like class 3 to 4 rapids. So, all right, let's jump in, okay? So let's talk about sex first. Let's talk about sex we're going to do that. We're going to talk about sex. I am not a sexpert or a sex expert, but I was a teen who had sex. And so let's just talk about it, shall we? Okay. I want you to normalize sexual development. Melissa, you stay in this conversation. Do not go anywhere. You stay right here. I know this is uncomfortable, you guys, but we've got to have this. If you and I can have this now, you can go have this with your teenager, all right? I want you to normalize sexual development. And the biggest question I get from parents is when? Like, when should I start this? When do I start this? My answer is right now. Right now. Right now. I have talked about this before in a couple places. I'm just inserting this one thing because my brain just went to a different thought. I have spoken about this topic before, but it was when my phone was dying and I didn't realize that, and Instagram literally just blew up the talk and it disappeared. So it's never been posted anywhere. So I'm redoing this today. If you've already seen it, I got some more detail for you. So stay tuned. I'm going to redo this one today and post it as well so that it's finally here. Okay, so let's normalize sexual development. Start talking about it right now. How do you start that conversation, you ask? Well, you start it by talking about yourself. Yeah, class 11 rapids, right, Connie? Start this with yourself. So if you have a young daughter, okay, who is starting menstruation, starting her period, and then you can talk about it then. But your daughter could be physically and sexually developing before she gets her period. So please don't wait. Please don't wait. Okay? And if you have a boy, I have 2 sons, just because they don't get a period doesn't mean you don't talk about this. No, it's not like a free pass because that's it, you have a boy, you don't need to talk about this. No. You need to talk about this. You need to talk about it. Okay? I want to talk about the teen brain for 1 second. So when they enter puberty, the pituitary gland basically explodes in their brain. Okay? The pituitary gland is what signals the sexual hormones, so estrogen and somewhat testosterone in young girls as well, and testosterone in young men to heighten, okay, to escalate within their body. And of course, that does things like you all know, okay, like pubic hair and breast development, and for men, the like growth, I hate the word but growth like in their penis and in testicles, and start, ejaculation becomes different. So anyway, is this a mom, dad talk or daughter? You know what? It's whatever works in your family. There's some families where dads are closer to daughters to have this conversation, and some where their mom and daughter, they don't get along. And in some cases, it's a mom and a son who are more comfortable with it. So you got to work this out in your family, whatever's the best way to do it. But here's what I guarantee you. If you are not having this conversation with your teenager, I 100% promise you, listen to me right now. Your teenager is having this conversation with their friends. They're looking it up on the internet. They are finding, this is the first generation of teenagers, because of digital connectivity, who are turning to each other for life advice and not their parents and or a trusted family friend or some other adult. So if you don't start having this conversation right now, they're turning to someone and getting information that it may not be true. It might not be buffered with some context or perspective. So it's either going to be you or it's going to be some other friend or in the bathroom at school or whatever. So let's just start doing it now. All right. So as their hormones are developing in their brain, it of course is creating physical development in their body, physical sexual development in their body, but it's also hijacking their brain. Let's just say it, like they're a giant raging hormone, right? In their head, okay? So what goes on for the hormonal, or they start having, I call it, this is my own term, it's certainly not scientific, I call it sexual awareness. I am not saying, do not come at me in the comments. I'm not saying they're sexualizing everyone, okay? But they've gone from like young boys hugging moms. I've said this a million times, but here it is again. A young boy who hugs their mom puts their head where? Right here. Doesn't bother them when they're a young kid. It's like, meh, like whatever. Thanks, Connie. It doesn't bother them. But as a teenager, they are developing a sexual awareness, and putting their head right in between your boobs now is so awkward. They're not sexualizing you. It's a sexual awareness, okay? That is very uncomfortable for them. So boys will tend to want to now hug you like a cape, like they'll hug you a side hug, or they're gonna come around like your neck and hug you from behind. It's because hugging these is gross to them. You are not gross, okay? You are not gross, but they don't know how to be and hug and feel these pushing against their body when it's a young boy, okay? For girls, sometimes the opposite happens. For dads, it can be extremely uncomfortable to hug their gorgeous daughter whom they deeply love. And maybe this is only if hugging was already something in the relationship. If hugging wasn't already present, please don't force hugging, okay? That's gross. Like, can we be respectful of people's personal space? If hugging, so touch, physical touch is a love language, a very affectionate, then it might have already been present. But for dads who hug their daughters, now it can be really weird for dads to hug their daughter when they feel these. They feel the boobs. And for dads, it can be weird. That doesn't mean that dads are sexualizing their daughter. It's just like, this isn't my baby girl anymore. She's becoming a young woman, and they can have a hard time with that. And that doesn't make them bad. It's their job to go do that work, okay? But here's what happens. I hear this all the time. If moms start to feel rejected, which is normal, okay, and hurt that their son won't hug them anymore, and then get this weird guilty, shamey thing going on to force their son to continue to hug them, that will create more problems than not. So if your son was a hugger and now doesn't feel comfortable hugging you, can you just be with that for a second and let them do side hugs? Let them hug you from behind, like where they wear you as a cape. And just know that this is their journey and their process. They still love you, okay? But they're dealing with this whole sexual development thing going on in their body and their brain, and they're noticing things they didn't notice before. And if you're a dad who has a daughter who is physically developing and you find that very hard to be with, that is your work. Go do it. Because if you remove your physical affection from your daughter because she's physically developing and you are not okay with it, what she learns is her body, as it is becoming, is dirty, shameful, and doesn't deserve physical affection anymore because it's gross. These are the little subtle nuances that go on for our teenagers. So it's critical to maintain, if there was a healthy physical relationship before, like a healthy show of affection, to maintain that in a way that works for your teenager without removing yourself or making it about you. Because you're projecting a message on them that is shameful around their bodies and how that works, okay? So now let's talk about hormonal urges, okay? If you normalize sexual development, how to have this conversation, you want to just start having the conversation. Start talking to them about, use an example like, hey, I heard that Bev's daughter is starting to date. What are your friends doing? Just use some innocuous in like that. Or I heard that, I saw that some of your friends are dating. Like, where are you with that? How do you just start talking about it like that? And yes, you just bring it up, okay? You just start. I know your lips are going to turn to concrete and you're not going to want to do it. I don't care. I'm here with you. I'm in your ear. I'm on your shoulder. You got this, okay? That you also you can also start sharing your experience. So you can just start talking about it at dinner. This was, when I started dating, this is what I thought dating was. This was my first boyfriend, or my first crush. I remember my first crush. My first crush was in grade 4. Yes, I was a highly sexually aware child. My poor parents. My first crush was in grade 4. I was 10. I was 10, you guys. Now that doesn't mean I did anything about it, but I remember feeling this way about this young boy who I'd known for a long time and being like, this is weird. Why do I feel this way? And then I remember the day I realized that was a crush. And being like, oh, this is weird. This is weird. And then I felt weird and self-conscious all of a sudden. It's like Adam and Eve in the garden. Like all of a sudden I felt self-conscious about being around him because this feeling of being a crush. Talk to your kids about that. Share your experience. When you share your experience with your teenager, okay, you really open up to them that it is normal. These kids are afraid of what they're feeling or curious about it, and they're gonna go find out. So you may as well start talking to them about it now. Sorry, I didn't change my screen thing and it keeps disappearing. So talk to your kids about how relationships you had, your first crush, your first date. Just start talking about it. And if you can, get your spouse, your partner to also chime in so that they're hearing both two perspectives, not necessarily a male and female. Doesn't matter what your relationship is. I love and accept you. Oh, did I just pause myself? Okay, sorry you guys, my screen keeps, I gotta figure out how to do these settings better. So make sure that if you can, get both parties to play in. So like we have 2 boys, okay? So I would talk to my teens about like, I was a jerk magnet, you guys. I found every jerk in the book, okay? I found them all. And how I felt about that, how I was being treated. And then my husband would also talk about his girlfriends. And the irony is my husband and I have known each other since we were 15. So we knew each other's boyfriends and girlfriends. So we would just start having these fun banter kind of conversations with our kids. And, you know, sometimes they would chime in and ask questions and sometimes they wouldn't. But we were normalizing sexual development, normalizing starting to be attracted to other people. I'm not necessarily saying the opposite sex. Again, I love and support and accept you however you are. I don't care. I'm just talking about normalizing the sexual urge, the sexual awareness that goes on, okay? So that your teenager isn't feeling like it's this, whoa, what is this thing? And then they start to like hide it from you or feel like they need to hide it from you. That is the worst, that like, that's the biggest point of disconnection. Biggest point of disconnection is when they feel they have to hide this stuff from you. Now, as a young girl, it's a lot harder to hide from you. You know, if she's starting menstruation, etc., that's a lot harder. Okay. What to do with the sexual urges, that's where you come in. That's where you come in. Okay? So you come in with, what do you do with sexual urges? Because we want to normalize. It is normal to start to look at other people and like feel funny, like in the nethers, right? Like get tingly, have spontaneous erections. For girls, you know, it could be more tingling, warm, moisture, like body fluids. Like you got to talk to your kid about this. For your young boys, like talk to them about what it's like, you know, unfortunately to get like spontaneous erections in math class and have to carry their math books over their crotch area to get to the next class. Because come on, for 1 second, do you remember how mortifying that was? Mortifying. Absolutely mortifying. So when you talk to your teenage boy and you let them know, look, I know it's embarrassing. It's awful. Like you just want to like have the world open up and swallow you right there in that moment. But you can't. And here's the things that you can do to help get through something that's going to happen that you can't avoid, okay? Girls can hide it better. Right? Unless like for girls sometimes, right, they get hard nipples, and depending on what bra they're wearing, that can show through shirts. So that's something that you want to talk about with your young daughter. Like maybe they need a different bra. Maybe, you know, bras with a little bit more lining so that they don't look like they're, it's called high beaming, right? So they don't look like they're high beaming around school. Like these are really mortifyingly embarrassing moments that you want to help your teenager through. But you want to normalize it. Just be like, yeah, I will never forget that first time that my friends and I went to the beach and I was wearing the white bathing suit. Do you guys remember those? Like those were like 90s, in the white bathing suit. Bad idea. Because we didn't do the math and the experiment of what that thing looked like when it was wet. Who invented that? Normalize. Tell stories of how awful it went for you, what you learned, what you didn't learn, all of these things. Okay. So hormonal urges, make them okay. It is okay. It's okay to be attracted to other people. That's okay. It's what you do about those urges. Separate that, please. The development, a sexual development, hormonal development, from what you do with that. Normalize and love and fully accept, laugh about, tell stories, then talk about what you do about them. Because when you put them together, your teenager feels shamed, blamed, criticized, judged, and they're probably going to hide a lot of it from you. And that's probably not going to go well. So when you talk to them about, now what do you do about that? And you may want to discuss with your teenager about porn. Look, I'm just saying, let's talk about it, right? That because I will just say for right now, social media is becoming soft porn. You can agree or disagree with me, but social media in a lot of ways is like soft porn. I don't know if you've looked at TikTok lately and the number of 18-year-old or very young girls who are dancing around there like half dressed. Really provocative. That's soft porn, you guys. So talk to your teenager about how sometimes like looking at these pictures or looking at things on social media, which used to just be entertaining, now their bodies are having a sexual reaction to what they're seeing. And that's okay to have that reaction. Okay, the reaction is normal. Okay. What happens when we get in and they feel good, okay? The sexual reaction, it feels good. It's supposed to feel good. That's how we were made. It's supposed to feel good. But now, but when we talk to your teenager about continually looking at either pornography in itself or versions of social media that are like soft porn, what happens in the brain? So we want to talk to your teenager about what happens in the brain, that it feels good because it's hitting that dopamine and it's rising estrogen or testosterone in the body. And of course it feels good, and that's normal and that's okay. But it can become an addictive hit, like someone pushing the pleasure center over and over. And that statistics show that the more that you look at that and the more you use that as a hit for the pleasure center, it desensitizes it in real life. So when you go to have that experience, which can be lovely and beautiful and intimate experience, it'll feel kind of like numb, because it will never match the artificial version of that. So there's lots of studies that you can look up behind that. But Jenny, again, this is a place to just start talking about these things with your kids. Just start talking about it. Masturbation, I don't know if you want to talk to your kid about that, how you feel about that, but it is a way for them to drive their own bus, and you don't have to, they're not doing it with somebody else. So I don't know, but can we just normalize, like for girls, just girls at a very young age, very, very young girls, depending on, again, everyone develops differently, but if they have a strong physical sexual drive, it doesn't make them dirty or bad. I need you to hear that right now. Doesn't make them dirty or bad. There are young girls who just like rock on their floor, right? Because they're stimulating their clitoris. They're stimulating themselves just by rocking on the floor or rocking on pillows or on their bed or up against something. That's not bad, you guys. It's not bad. It is a normal physical drive for pleasure and sexual reproduction, okay? So let's talk about it. So Matt, you might want to talk about masturbation and, wherever you stand on that. I'm not here to judge. I don't whatever. That's part of it. We taught our kids, our boys, how to do laundry by about 12. Because as much as we had already talked to them about a wet dream and what a wet dream was, and that it's normal, and that in fact men can have wet dreams well into maturity, that we didn't want our kids to have to come to us in like the morning and be like, can I wash my sheets? We didn't want them to have to, so we explained to them about what it was, what could happen, it's normal, and then we taught them how to do laundry, two separate things, so that they wouldn't have to come and be embarrassed if that happened for them. They knew how to do their own laundry and they didn't have to explain it all, so they still felt they had a version of privacy. Okay. For young girls, if they get their period and now it's all over the sheets and they've got to what is it that you are doing to empower your teenager with sexual development so that she doesn't feel shamed or embarrassed, right? I know a lot of young girls, their moms, when they get their periods for the first time, maybe they feel like crap, they're all moody, whatever, they take them out for dinner. Celebrate instead of shame. Can we just change this whole generational message about how it was dirty and bad and something you didn't talk about? It is a normal part of who we are. So let's just do it. Okay, so that's the sexual part of this talk. If you're completely creeped out, but you're still here, I just want to say you're doing amazing. You're doing amazing. Stick with me. Let's take a deep breath. Okay, you see, you did it. See, you stuck this out. and you're still here. Okay. So when to start the conversation? Now. Use yourself as your example. Now. Start talking about when you dated. Start talking about when you got your period. I got my period at 12 years old in gym class. Not just gym class, gymnastics. You know, when you were wearing like the tight shorts? It was awesome. It was all kinds of awesome. I have never been so mortified in my life, but I didn't have a relationship with my mom. So I had nobody, I didn't have the conversation. I had nothing on me I had no change of clothes. I had nothing. These are things you want to talk about with your kids, with your girls, okay? Equip them. All right, let's talk about dating for the second half of this. All right, so again, share what happened for you, your first crush, your first date. How did you feel? How did you want to feel? Because let's just say it right now, whether you dated a girl or a boy or whatever that looked like for you, your first date probably wasn't awesome. But it wasn't the other person's fault, okay? We're all totally immature nerds, like with raging hormones, just doing the best that we could to like act all like cool and, you know, whatever that was, right? So it was probably totally corny and didn't work. So laugh about it. Make it normal. Okay, so just share your stories as much as possible and be an open book. I'm not saying start lecturing your kid, like use every single moment to talk all about you. Okay, drop in your stories and have a co-parent so that they're getting two sides of it. And then just leave it because your teenager will start to come to you for questions. Okay. Now, if you're thinking I can't talk to my kid about sex because I'm condoning that they'll have sex, I just want to say to you right now that has been disproven for decades. When we brought sexual education, sex education into the school system, sexual promiscuity actually dropped dramatically. So we've already proven year over year, based on studies, at least throughout all of North America, that the more we talk about it, the less kids are likely to do it. Okay. Now, teen sex experimentation, teen sexuality is actually down now in the last 18 months, mostly because of COVID and virtual living. But again, I can't say this enough that education beats experimentation. Education beats experimentation. Okay. Okay. So dating. Your teenager is probably going to pick someone you hate. Can we just say that? They're probably going to pick someone you hate. So let's get over it. You cannot, you can try. You can try and tell your teenager who they should go and see and who they shouldn't see and why. And you can try and disallow them from seeing. That's not going to work. Because the minute you do that, you've made that person like a candy store. The minute you make anything forbidden, now they're going to literally run to that person. Anything that's forbidden, they will run to, okay? So talk to your teenager about healthy relationships instead. Healthy relationships, okay? So I did a whole YouTube video on this. That's also on my Instagram here. You'll find it's helping your teenager develop healthy relationships. I think that's what it's called, helping your teen develop healthy relationships. So you can watch that. I'm not going to go over the whole thing in detail, but what you want to talk about, not who they're dating or who they're not dating. What you want to talk to them about is this. What is trust to you? And it doesn't matter how they answer, so don't argue or judge or criticize. What is trust to you? How do you know that you can trust someone? What words, phrases, and behaviors are present so you know you can trust that person? How do you know someone else trusts you? What relationships do you currently have this in? And start talking to them about people in their lives, about who they feel, who they trust. Then talk to them about respect. What does respect even look like to you? Most adults can't answer this question, so you may as well start talking about it now. What does respect look like to you? What words, phrases, and behaviors are present when you know that you feel respected? This is helping their prefrontal cortex to develop a very firm lens through which to see healthy relationships, okay? Which works a lot better to equip them rather than try and protect them by telling them who they can see and who they cannot see. Also, yes, intimacy, but that'll come in 1 second. So once you develop, like, what does respect look like? What does intimacy look like? What does safety look like? Where do you feel safe? And where do you feel loved? Where do you feel like loved? Because one of the reasons that teenagers will go and start dating, I was very promiscuous. Hi, go ahead, judge if you want. I was a highly promiscuous teenager because, first of all, I was one of those teenagers who physically had a very heightened experience of sexual development. Like, I could feel it in my body all over the place, okay? Not all teenagers do. I did. And it's not just reserved for girls, okay? For some boys, that's the way that it is. I came from a very emotionally and somewhat physically abusive home. So I didn't feel safe at home. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel respected. None of those things. So I went looking for love or kindness, something that felt good, like emotionally, not just physically, something that felt kind, good, like in all the wrong places. And I found all the wrong places, okay? And as much as I knew what I was doing, it didn't feel great. Like, it felt physically good, like in the moment. It didn't feel good in the long term, but it felt better than how I felt at home. So I kept doing it because I just wanted to know what love, I wanted to feel loved. So here's what, this is very hard, but I need you to hear this. Your teenager's perception of your relationship with them is the truth. It's their truth. You don't have to agree with it. You can vehemently disagree. Doesn't matter. If your teenager feels like they have to fit in at home, which means dimming, abandoning, or denying any part of themselves to feel loved and accepted at home, they are likely to go seek affection or something, feeling loved, belonging outside of the home. Belonging, these are Dr. Brené Brown definitions. Belonging means that I am fully and wholly loved and accepted for who I am. I don't need to change any part of me. And that was what I was looking for. Coming from an emotionally and physically abusive home, I was looking to feel loved and accepted for who I was. And I was also highly sexually aware. And so those two were a bit of like a bomb waiting to go off. Okay. Sorry, I keep touching the screen, you guys. I forgot to turn off my screen timer thing, so it keeps blacking out on me every 30 seconds. Okay, so your teenager's also using dating and sex as a form of validation. It's a stamp of validation that someone outside of their family who they view like, you have to love them. I mean, you're my fam, you have to love me. You're my mom or you're my dad. You have to love me. That doesn't feel valid. It doesn't feel like enough sometimes. And so they will seek validation that they are lovable and attractive outside of the home. In sometimes a platonic relationship, same sex, difference, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. Again, however you are, I totally love and accept how you are, okay? But teenagers will seek that as a form of validation. What's playing against you as a parent is that as part of their brain development in adolescence, literally their identity changes. So it's a process in the brain called pruning and myelination. If you haven't watched Disney's Inside Out, I strongly recommend you watch it again from this perspective. Their brain is literally destroying good neural pathways to happy things, destroying it. That's called pruning. And myelination is it's becoming far more complex and it's rewriting new neural pathways that don't yet have secure connections yet. So what that does is it is literally shaking their identity of who they thought they were and who you thought they were to who they're becoming. And that process in there can lower their self-esteem up to 30%. So when your self-esteem feels low, many of us, including your teenager, will go to find external validation from someone in those times where you feel really shaky. External validation. So you're fighting against a natural process in their brain I shouldn't say fighting against, but rather than fighting against it, this is the critical time for you to be invested in building your teenager's self-esteem and confidence, letting them know about the changes in their brain, which I've done a bunch of videos on that. If you can't find them, just send me a DM. I'll send you the link. So that your teenager can understand the changes that are going on for them in their brain and that they are normal. Do you know most teenagers think they are broken, going crazy, and are terrified of the changes that are going on in their brain because nobody's telling them what's naturally happening? How unsettling is that? And then we wonder why our teenagers go and they seek like marijuana, CBD, drinking, sex, because they're like, they're terrified and their self-confidence is down. So you can play a role in helping them through this really challenging time. Again, I wrote the article 10 ways to build your teen help build your teen self-confidence and esteem. It's a YouTube video. It's also here on my Instagram. You'll also find it on my website, alipayne.com. It's one of the most popular blogs. Okay, so your teenager is perhaps dating and getting I'm coming back. Okay, your teenager is getting sexually active because they're trying to get external validation that they are okay, they are lovable for who they are and who they're becoming when they don't even know. They're trying to seek a sense of belonging, which is normal and natural in our brain. And whether they think they belong at home or not is not up for your judgment. And it doesn't mean you're being a bad parent. It just means you gotta be in tune to this. Okay. Also, I want to talk to you about two more things, prevention and pregnancy. So prevention, if your start talking to your teenager, whether they're sexually active or not, you can start to talk to them depending on where you get a feel for them about prevention. So actually, sorry, I got two more things to talk about first. So consent. Consent, thankfully, is talked about a lot right now in teen circles and in schools and a lot of ways like that about consent. That and raising two boys, I can tell you, we drove that puppy home, that it's either a full hell yes or it's a no. So whether you have a teenage daughter or a teen boy, that you talk to your teenager about consent, what consent sounds like, looks like, what does it look like to change their minds? Do they have permission in their current relationship to change their mind? Like right up and like at any point? Because if they don't feel safe to change their mind, that's not a safe relationship. If they feel guilted or expected to do things they're not comfortable with, that's not a safe relationship. They, to talk about, are they okay if their partner says all of a sudden changes their mind? That is what we got to talk about, consent. You have to talk about consent, physical and emotional safety. Because what teenagers don't understand is that sex or sexual activity does have an emotional impact. They're going to tell you it doesn't. They're going to tell you, no, it doesn't. It's just like teenagers are really good these days at separating the sexual act from the emotions. And no, it's just what we do. Like, it's just friends with benefits. Like, I'm good. No. Like, depending on personality style, they might be able to compartmentalize better than some, better than most, but there is an emotional impact to sexual activity. And the best way to explain that to your teenagers is share your own experience. Maybe you lost your virginity in the back of a car with your feet up on the roof and it was cold and uncomfortable and it was like you wish it was not that. Like teenagers kind of don't understand that there's really only one first. And is it a first that they want to tell their story to their kids about or to their future friends about as something that they regret? Or is it something that they want to talk about that even though they might not still be with that person, that it was really special and it was intentional and they thought it out? So you're going to talk to your teenager about that, right? My first time was with my very long-term boyfriend. And I was a very conscious choice. And I waited and I waited and I told him I wasn't ready until I decided I was ready. And I thought that was the right choice. I don't regret that. But it wasn't in a way that I'm like, oh gosh, it was awful and it was and it was like, so there is an emotional impact. You want to talk to your teenager if you think they're sexually active about some of the physical impact of sex. Okay. Like for girls, there can be bleeding, it can hurt. It's not always like the movies. And this is the problem, is our teenagers are growing up in a Netflix, Disney world where they think it's all like unicorns and rainbows and stars and like six-pack ab. It's not. That the first time can be the worst time. Even though it was intentional, well thought out, there was consent, the first time can be the worst time. Like, let's just talk about that, okay? The best time to talk about that, you can talk about that after you're watching movies. If you've watched a movie or a show with your teenager and there was sexual activity in the TV or the show, you could be like, so do you think you would do that? Or like, would you do that? Like, talk about the character. If you talk about the character in some of their favorite shows or books or whatever, it depersonalizes it so the conversation is a bit safer, okay? So talk about like, would you do what that character did? Or do you think that was something that they regret or not? Or it depersonalizes it so that's a safer conversation. Yes, it will. Sandra, this will be on my IGTV. I'm going to wrap up in about 4 minutes here. Okay. So, prevention. You got to talk about teenagers don't like to know the reality, right? They're in it for the fun. And that's okay. It doesn't make them immature or bad people. That's just the teenage brain. They're not into it for the full consequence of this kind of thing. So, talk to your teenager about prevention. All kinds of birth control. If again, I'm not here to judge what your family values are or not, or whatever. I just want to make sure that you talk to your teenager about what prevention looks like, sexually transmitted infections, and pregnancy prevention, and not just pregnancy prevention, but keeping them physically safe. So all kinds of birth control, lots of clinics, family clinics, have this kind of information available. You can get lots of pamphlets and booklets to talk about with your teenager. And yes, you need to talk about this with your teenager. You don't need to talk about it in detail, but even if you like bring it up on a drive and being like, look, I just want to teenagers don't like having these conversations eye to eye. It already is weirding them out. And I know your skin is crawling too. And I'm really proud of you for courageously having these conversations anyway. So when you have these conversations, you can kind of just drip things in. And then if you put some pamphlets and stuff in their room, on their desk, it's not like out of the blue. You already had some of the conversation and they can read the rest of it because they don't want to have the conversation with you either. But that doesn't mean it's not your job to bring it up, okay? Pregnancy. It's all fun and games until something happens, right? So lots of teenagers are getting to the point now where they're talking about consent, they're talking about protection, but they're not talking about pregnancy. They're not talking about what happens if you get pregnant, okay? And so it's not about playing the big heavy with your teenager, but it is about saying, look, there is no 100% guaranteed prevention. There isn't one. So have you and your partner talked about what you would do if, and again, this is where you can share some of your values and your family values of whatever that looks like. But what does prevention of pregnancy look like so that this isn't the first, so they're not having this thought, they're not thinking it through for the first time when it's happening. And P.S., doesn't matter what you talk about with your teenager around pregnancy, if it happens, they could all of a sudden, when it's actually happening in the moment, you have very different thoughts and feelings about it. So they might change their mind. But at least you've had the conversation and talked about options and what that might look like, okay? Because pretending isn't gonna work. Yeah, but I don't think most teenage boys, Angel, are gonna get a vasectomy. So that's most teenage boys aren't gonna do that. So I just don't think that's realistic as a teenager. Anyway, okay, so that is what I wanted to share with you today. I know it's a whole lot to be with. Here's what you could do. You could watch this video with your teenager. You could let them watch this video. You could use this as the cray cray lady on Instagram as a way to open up a conversation with your teenager, okay? But not having these conversations is not helpful. Your teenager is either going to be curious or they're an experiment. So you can educate and equip, or they're going to go experiment out of their curiosity. Like, you pick. And no, I'm sorry, there's no gray area. It's one or the other. So the question again about when to start, now. How to have the conversation, just start. Start dripping it in. Maybe someone else started dating, someone else has a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. You just start talking about that. If your teenager changes the way that they're hugging, don't shame and blame them for it. Love and accept them through it. This is one of the most challenging times as a teenager because their brain is changing along with their body, and it's a little disheartening, okay? So you can be part of this by normalizing the physical and hormonal changes as good and beautiful and amazing because it's how we're created, and then talking separately about what you do about those. What you do about those is a separation. Who they are, who they're becoming, sexual, hormonal, brain changes, natural, normal, funny sometimes. What they choose to do about that is where you can start to talk about values and healthy relationships, consent, all of these other things, okay? Absolutely, the conversations are going to tend to be super, super short, little drips. Do not go into this thinking that you're having a sit-down lecture, because I guarantee you it won't work. Your teenager will literally glaze over or get up and leave because their skin will be crawling too, okay? So tiny, tiny, tiny little drips. Little drips, one thing at a time. The key is you drip in to start the conversation, and then you zip it and listen. Because when your teenager knows that they can get curious, or there is a silent space, safe silence for them to come in and get curious and ask questions, then they will. This isn't a lecture. This is you dropping in little things so that they feel safe to start asking questions or bringing to you what's happening, okay? And quite frankly, it doesn't matter what they say or what, just be curious and listen. Just be curious and listen, okay? That's how you build emotional safety so they will continue to have these conversations with you. All right, I want to thank you so much for listening and being here today or on the replay. Please post your comments below if you have them. Again, my name is Allie Payne. You can find me here on Instagram at Allie Payne, on TikTok at Allie Payne, or on my website, alliepayne.com, where you will find tons of other resources and articles on my blog. If you're not already on my weekly newsletter, then you need to hit the link in my bio and get weekly newsletters sent to you on a weekly basis so you can be equipped and empowered to be the best parent that you want to be, whatever that looks like. And please know, I believe in you, I support you, I'm behind you, and you're not alone. All right, everybody, mwah! Have a wonderful weekend. I will see you next Thursday right here at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Bye.